Hi there. As you can tell, I am at work. By my wardrobe, I'm at work on Supernatural today. And I just wanted to address a topic that has been somewhat troubling to me, and I feel like it needs to be addressed. So, I've noticed on my social media feeds, particularly on, very, very actively yesterday on Twitter, there were quite a lot of nasty comments, people saying things that were pretty hurtful to me and to other people, specifically on the topic of the spelling of my character's diminutive form of his name. So a lot of people, last night I was live tweeting the show and I wrote Cass in a tweet, C-A-S-S. And there was a very loud and a very vitriolic response from a lot of the fandom, who were arguing that the abbreviation of the name Castiel could be better spelled C-A-S. And I can understand why people would have that vantage point, because of course Castiel is spelled C-A-S-T-E-L. And I rushed in to defend myself, and I probably said some things that I shouldn't have said about my accusers, the people who were saying that I was misspelling the word, that I had mishandled the word, that I had treated the spelling of the diminutive form of my character's name disrespectfully. And I wanted to try to explain where I'm coming from about this, and then I definitely want to understand where the fandom is coming from on this particular point, and then maybe hopefully find a common ground. The last thing I want is for us to get into a situation where it's a lot of name calling and a lot of negativity, and that we're being driven apart over this issue. Now, I just shot a scene where I'm going to show you a page from the script that we're working with right now. Did I misspell Castiel when I just spelled it out? C-A-S-T-I-E-L? Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. This kind of dialogue is so important and it's so helpful. We are all one community, and it's so easy to find ourselves divided, and these little points can drive a wedge between us if we don't bridge the gap. I want to show you script. And this is something I probably shouldn't be doing, because this is a script that we're shooting right now. So I'm going to just make sure I'm not revealing anything too revealing. But I want to show you. Dean, damn it, Cass, spelled with two S's. And if you scan down the screen here on the page, you'll see over and over. Is this coming up backwards for you? It looks backwards when I look at the... oh, that's a reflection problem. Okay, so Cass, again, spelled with two S's here. And we go down further. Cass. Is this upside down? No, it's right down. Cass. There's just an awful lot of instances in this script where Cass is spelled with two S's. And it's so easy for me to take a sort of elitist vantage point on this and say, well, because the people that wrote this script are the people who are responsible for running the show where this fictitious character exists, and the people who are writing this are the creators of the character, and so they know, but they quote unquote know best. Well, I generally, as a person, don't like to subscribe to that kind of top-down thinking, and it is it's certainly not a democratic way to approach things. It's almost authoritarian, certainly autocratic. And that is not the world I want to live in. I don't want to be a party to that kind of we know best, your voice doesn't count society, because we are ultimately all in this together. So thank you for letting me share that. As you can see, in some ways, I think I've been largely I've been brainwashed. You know, I have time and time again seen scripts, seen memos, where the name abbreviated is spelled CASS. And because that is the only perspective that I have seen with regularity, and it's coming from such a reputable source, I have made the assumption that that is factually how the short form of Castiel is spelled. But I never bothered to stop and wonder why some people might choose to spell it otherwise. I never allowed myself to give internal voice to that perspective. And so I guess I'm coming here to you today to say, I want to hear you. I want to listen. I want to be a listener on this topic. And I want you to know that your voice counts and that you matter. And just because you don't spell it correctly doesn't mean that your spelling shouldn't be validated in some way. I am going to make a commitment to you right now. And that commitment is that I will try to use a more neutral spelling of the abbreviated form of this name in the future. For example, I could spell it, when I am writing it, I could spell it C-A-S apostrophe, I'm sorry, parenthetical, C-A-S, open parentheses, S, close parentheses. That way, it gives the reader the choice of whether they want to include the second S or not. And it doesn't force my perspective on this issue onto you as if mine is the only valid spelling of the name. I would also like to say I would be willing to serve as an emissary here. I would be willing to... Shannon suggests that we spell it C-A $. I like that solution. I feel like that kind of transcends the whole S issue. So that could be a great solution. And this kind of workshopping, this kind of dialogue is so productive. I would be willing to serve as an emissary between the fandom, who really seemed unified or near unified in their wanting to spell it C-A-S. I would be willing to serve as an emissary between the fandom and the writers and producers of the show and see if we can all find some common ground. And perhaps the writers would be willing to shift the spelling, to modernize the spelling. Perhaps Cass spelled with 2 S's worked in season 4. Maybe it doesn't work now. So maybe we need to update that. Or we could just stick with C-A $, which I really do think is a great option. I believe Jim Michaels put his voice, our producer, our executive producer, he threw his voice into the conversation last night, and he suggested spelling it, I believe, K-H-A-H-Z, which also would work for me. I think it's critical that the name still be pronounced Cass and not Kaz. I want to say, for me, that's a value, and that's a value that I hold dearly, and it's not something that I am personally willing to compromise. To me, that's important. It feels right, and that becomes a moral issue for me. But I I want to thank you all for voicing your opinions. I want you to know that you continue to be heard. And Stephanie points out, and she says, I don't see why, with all the other big issues in this world, well, people need to get so vitriolic about this. And I think I see where you're coming from, but I also don't want to diminish people's passion on this issue. It may not be the most important issue to you, but to some people it is. Caitlin says, I think we could grow and change and be willing to grow in every sense of the word. I really like that perspective on this. It's so nice to step back and embrace the whole picture like that. If anyone has any more, I have a couple more minutes before I have to get back to work here. So if anyone has any additional questions that they want to raise here or comments that they want me to throw into the mix, I want to say again, I am so... Julie says, is anyone else sick of being angry? And that is such a lovely sentiment. And again, Julie, I don't want to diminish people's anger, because of course they have a right to be angry about this. There has been an entire history of people using the diminutive form of this name in a single S spelling context. And so to suddenly storm in and dictate that it needs to be spelled not spelled as C as, but as C ass, that can be really hurtful, and it can also be very disruptive to a person's worldview. But yes, it feels good to move past the anger. And Megan has a question. Where did the extra S come from? Originally, it, of course, just came from a single keystroke in the writer's room. A writer, and I have to tell you, I haven't actually done due diligence on this. I don't know the literature to the extent that I don't know when Cass was first spelled C-A-S-S, or whether there was an iteration of the spelling of the short form of Castiel that had a single S in official supernatural documents, but I can say that for a long time it has been spelled C-A-S-S, and I could speculate on that point. I wish I had a writer or a producer here who could discuss, who could explain. I will speculate. I'll let you know what my guess is, my best guess as to how that came to pass. A lot of times when people are guest starring on the show, they will come in and they will say, how do you pronounce your character's name? Is it Castile? And I will say, no, it is not Castile, it's Castiel. And that's very important, that on the page it is not immediately clear how the name Castiel is pronounced. Likewise, a guest star could very easily wonder, how is your name pronounced, your character's name pronounced, Jensen? Is it Deanne? And Jensen will have to say, no, it's Dean. So in order to possibly simplify things and to make it so that everybody reading the script was clear on the pronunciation, they spelled it C-A-S-S, which is hard C followed by the vowel and consonant cluster that makes the sound ass. So Cass, as opposed to C followed by a S, which would make the sound as. So it's possible that they were just trying to avert the catastrophe of having someone pronounce the diminutive form of my character's name, Kaz. That's speculation, whether that's true, whether there was another reason behind the spelling, I don't know. I just think I think I have to wrap this up shortly. But I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for your voice. Thank you for allowing me to step in and have this. I'm sorry, I just saw another question and I have to address it. Jessica says, does the spelling matter? LOL. I really think that that kind of comment has no place on this thread. Of course the spelling matters. This is a big deal because it is an emotional issue for some people. We can't dismiss it. We can't act like this is nothing just because for you it doesn't happen to be one of the most pressing issues. We can't dismiss it. We need to address it because people do care. Whether you care, whether I care, whether any other thinking person cares, that's not the point. Some people do care, and we need to address it. You have all been so passionate and so vocal and have put so much thought into this issue, and I want to thank you for bringing it to my attention. I could so easily have brushed past this and not noticed, and that I am so glad that I am not caught in that vortex of insensitivity. You are role models to me in some respects, and I thank you so much for coming together. I feel like we have just begun the conversation, and we have just begun the healing here. We have an enormous road ahead of us. We have made strides today, but there is still so much work to be done before we can definitively say, yes, we have consensus. The name is spelled this way, whether it's with one S, with two S's, with a dollar sign, with a parenthetical for the second S. However, whatever solution we ultimately come to, I know that as a community, we can solve this problem. We are a great community, and when we put our minds to it, we can do anything. And this, while it's not going to be easy, and while some of us will suffer great losses, ultimately, we will come out stronger, we will come out better, and we will come out more united than we have ever been before. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful night.